Friday night was James Weller's escape. 5 days a week he worked a dead-end job at the city's shipping yard, hauling crates and checking manifests until his back screamed. Then came the bar, the one good thing in his life. A dark corner booth, cheap whiskey, and his usual group of half-drunk friends who laughed too loud and pretended everything was fine. Tonight, James had hit it a little harder than usual. His hands were unsteady as he leaned on the bar counter for balance, waving goodbye to Carl and Tim who were still downing shots. The bartender gave him that tired look, half judgment, half concern, but didn't say a word. Everyone knew James's routine. He came to drink, not talk. "Take care of yourself, man," Carl shouted as James pushed open the bar door, the jingle of the bell fading behind him. The cold night air hit his face like a slap, but James barely noticed. His breath fogged as he trudged toward his dented, rust-red pickup. The truck was a relic from better times. It rattled when it ran and wheezed when it didn't, but it was his. He fumbled with the keys, cursed under his breath, and finally got in. The engine coughed to life. He pulled out of the lot and onto the winding road leading home, surrounded on both sides by tall pine trees and deep woods. No lights. No houses. Just moonlight and shadows. The radio was stuck on a country station, his favorite. Something about losing love and bad luck. James laughed bitterly. "Story of my damn life," he muttered, reaching for the half-empty bottle in the cup holder, but thought better of it. Then his phone slipped from the dashboard. It slid down toward the pedals. "Ah, come on," he grumbled, bending down to grab it. That's when it happened. Something leapt into the road. He saw it for only a split second, tall, fast, glowing faintly orange in the headlights. Reflex took over. James jerked the wheel hard to the right. Tires screeched. The truck tore through the shoulder, bounced through a ditch, and slammed into a tree. Crunch. The seatbelt locked tight across his chest. The airbag exploded in a blur of white. His ears rang. The headlights now pointed at bent trees and dirt. The truck hissed steam like a dying animal. James coughed, pushing open the driver's side door. "God damn it!" he gasped, staggering into the dark. Pine needles crunched under his boots. He held his head, swaying from the alcohol and the impact. "What the hell did I hit?" he slurred. He stumbled to the front of the truck, lifting the hood with shaking hands. The radiator was toast. Steam billowed out, fogging his vision. Something smelled like burnt plastic. Then he heard it, a soft, female voice. "I'm sorry." James froze. He slowly turned. Standing there, half shadowed by moonlight and mist, was something out of a dream, or a nightmare. A woman, but not human. Her frame was tall and feminine, her skin covered in sleek, orange fur that shimmered faintly with silver streaks. Her long, fluffy tail twitched behind her, and her ears, fox-like, were perked up. Her eyes glowed amber in the dark, and her face, though exotic and slightly vulpine, was undeniably beautiful. "I didn't mean to," she said softly. "I didn't see the truck until it was too late." James's jaw dropped. What the hell are you?" He slapped himself. "You're not real. I'm drunk. I'm bleeding. I'm hallucinating a sexy fox lady in the woods?" She tilted her head. "You're hurt. Let me help you." "No. No, no, no." James backed up, slipped on a root, and hit the ground hard. Pain flashed in his side. His vision blurred. The last thing he saw before everything went black was her kneeling beside him, her hands gently touching his face, her voice soft and frightened. "Don't die. Please don't die." Warmth. The first thing James noticed was that he wasn't cold anymore. His body ached like he'd been hit by a truck, ironically fitting, but something smelled amazing. Rich, savory, greasy. Bacon? His eyes fluttered open. The sunlight streamed through dusty blinds, lighting up a room he didn't recognize. The ceiling above him was wooden, not the cracked plaster of his own home. The mattress beneath him was soft, and a thick quilt had been pulled over his chest. He blinked slowly, trying to sit up, but a sharp pain in his side forced a groan from his lips. "What the hell?" he whispered. Then he noticed the bandages. White gauze wrapped tightly around his ribs and shoulder. His shirt was gone. His arms were clean, scrubbed of blood and dirt. His hands trembled slightly as he touched the dressing. This isn't my room." Panic bubbled in his gut. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, wincing as he stood. Every muscle in his body complained, but he managed to shuffle toward the hallway, following the mouth-watering scent. Then he turned the corner into the kitchen and screamed. Standing at the stove, humming softly to herself, was the same orange-furred woman from the woods. Her large vulpine ears flicked toward him, her tail curling around her legs. She wore one of his oversized flannel shirts, which hung off her slender frame like a dress. Her bare furry legs shifted gracefully as she turned to face him with wide, concerned eyes. "You're awake," she said, smiling gently. "I was just finishing breakfast." James staggered backward, hitting the wall. What the hell? You're real. You're Jesus!" She stepped forward slowly, hands held up in peace. "You passed out after the crash? You were bleeding. I couldn't just leave you there. I brought you to your house. I followed the keys in your pocket. I cleaned your wounds." His mind reeled. No way. This is a dream. I drank too much, hit my head. This is some weird coma fantasy. You're not real. She looked wounded by that. I am real. My name is Rena. James gawked at her. Her eyes were too detailed, her voice too clear to be a hallucination. She took a plate from the counter and handed it to him, 2 strips of bacon, toast, scrambled eggs. I thought you'd be hungry. I found the food in your fridge. He took the plate, stunned, and slowly sat down. His head spun. The chair creaked under his weight. What happened to my truck? She looked away, guilty. It's totaled. The front axle snapped. The engine's crushed. James cursed under his breath. God damn it. I just paid off that piece of junk. I'm sorry, she whispered. I wasn't trying to get hit. I was just looking for food. I haven't eaten in days. He stared at her in disbelief. Her orange fur shimmered in the morning sun. What are you? Rena hesitated, ears flattening. I'll tell you, but you have to promise not to call the police. His hand tightened on the plate. And why the hell not? Because, she said, looking down, I'm pregnant. James sat frozen, the fork halfway to his mouth. He blinked slowly, unsure if he'd heard her right. You're what? Rena looked at him, her eyes glistening with something between fear and shame. Pregnant. That's why I was out there last night. I was starving. I needed something, anything, to eat. I didn't expect anyone to be driving on that road at that hour. James let out a breath, rubbed his face, then shook his head slowly. This is insane. You're some kind of, what, foxwoman? You cook breakfast, you bandage me up, and now you're telling me you're having babies? She nodded once, silent. How the hell are you even real? You don't just look like a talking animal, you look like... He waved vaguely at her legs, her swishing tail, the gentle fur across her arms. You look like something out of a sci-fi movie. Rena stood still, wringing her hands. I know it's hard to believe. But I didn't ask for this. I didn't choose to be made this way. James stared. Made? She closed her eyes, then opened them slowly. I wasn't born naturally. I was bred. By humans. In a lab. His pulse jumped. That's what? She nodded. It's here. In this town. He pushed his plate away, suddenly not hungry. There's no government lab in this town. This place is a dead zone for anything exciting. Rena's tail flicked. That's the point. They hid it in plain sight. A place no one would suspect. A front for something much darker. He narrowed his eyes. Where? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Binary Brews. James froze. His chair squeaked as he slowly leaned back, eyes locked on her. Binary Brews, the bar? The one I go to every damn night? Yes. She took a step forward. It's not just a bar. Beneath it there's a lab. They breed beings like me. Hybrid programs. Experiments. James barked a bitter laugh, then winced from the pain in his ribs. That place? The only shady thing I've seen in there is Carl trying to dance. I escaped last week, she said quietly. They were keeping us in cages. Running tests. Implanting embryos. I wasn't supposed to get out. But I did. I've been hiding ever since. James stared at her. He wanted to scream, or laugh, or walk out and never come back. But the pain in his body, the bandages on his chest, the warm plate of bacon, it was all too real. And the look in her eyes, that wasn't fake. He rubbed his temples. Okay. Let's say I believe you. What do you want from me? Rena looked at him with pleading eyes. Help me. Help me stop them. Help me expose the lab. I can't do this alone. James sighed, staring down at his trembling hands. You realize you're asking a drunk, jobless mechanic with a totaled truck to go up against a secret government operation, right? She leaned in closer, her voice soft. I also saw the way you tried to protect me. Even when you didn't know what I was. I know you're a good man. He glanced up, and despite himself, he couldn't help but notice how her eyes caught the light. Golden. Vulnerable. Real. Fine, he muttered. But we need a plan. And you're staying here. No one can see you. Rena nodded gratefully. I'll stay hidden. I promise. As he took another bite of bacon, James shook his head in disbelief. Jesus Christ. I crashed my truck into a tree and woke up with a pregnant foxwoman in my kitchen. What the hell is happening to my life? Later that day, James sat on the edge of his couch, staring at the coffee table where his cracked phone and a half-empty bottle of painkillers sat. The smell of antiseptic still lingered faintly in the air from where Rena had cleaned his wounds the night before. She was in the back room now, resting. The crash had bruised more than his ribs. It had shattered his entire grip on reality. Binary Brews. He'd been going there for years. He'd laughed there, drank there, wasted nights and paychecks there. And now he was supposed to believe that, underneath its beer taps and dartboards, there was a damn lab full of foxwomen in cages. James reached for the bottle, paused, then grabbed the painkillers instead. He popped two and leaned back, groaning. I found your laundry, came Rena's voice from the hallway. She patted softly across the wooden floor, her tail gently swaying behind her. She wore one of his old hoodies now, the sleeves bunched at her wrists. I hope you don't mind I washed the blood off the couch. James raised an eyebrow. I forgot you even bled. I don't usually. But I got scraped when you crashed. He looked her over. She moved with a certain elegance, fluid calm. The wild creature he thought he saw in the woods was gone. She looked domestic. Familiar. Comfortable here. I'm still trying to figure out if I've lost my mind, he said finally. I understand, Rena replied, sitting in the chair across from him. Most people would have run. Or locked me in a room. Or worse. He gave her a dry smile. I'm still considering it. Rena tilted her head. But you won't. James sighed. No. I won't. A beat of silence passed between them. So this. Binary Brews, he said. You said there's a lab beneath it? Yes, she said. Hidden behind the supply room. You need a passcode to enter the back elevator. Only staff have it. It leads down 2 levels. He frowned. You remember all that? I never forget the places where I was caged. James winced. Right. Sorry. It's okay. He rubbed his hands together. All right. I'll go. I'll scope it out. See if I can find anything weird. You, stay here. Don't answer the door. Don't open the curtains. I'll be careful. she said softly. You damn well better. If someone sees you, hell, even my neighbor Bill would call the cops. And he once got drunk and shot his own mailbox. Rena smiled faintly. Thank you, James. He looked up, surprised by the softness in her voice. Her eyes held something sincere. A connection. Maybe it was just the surreal insanity of the day, but for a moment, he forgot she wasn't human. He cleared his throat. Don't thank me yet. We haven't done anything. But as she stood and walked back toward the hallway, her tail brushing against the doorframe, James knew things had already changed. And there was no going back. That night, James stood outside Binary Brews with his hands jammed deep into his jacket pockets. The neon sign buzzed above the doorway, flickering slightly, casting a familiar pink glow over the sidewalk. He'd parked 2 blocks away and walked. Didn't want anyone seeing the battered mess that used to be his truck. His ribs still ached, and every breath reminded him of the wreck, but adrenaline dulled the pain. He watched the door for a while before pushing it open. The smell of beer and fried food hit him instantly, so normal it was almost offensive after everything he'd learned. Inside, the bar looked exactly the same as always. Pool table in the corner, jukebox playing something twangy and sad, Carl and Tim already at their usual booth. A few regulars nursed drinks at the counter while Jen the bartender dried glasses behind it. James made his way to the bar and ordered a beer, doing his best to play it cool. He chatted with Jen for a moment, trying to keep things light while his eyes scanned the place. Nothing seemed unusual at first. Until he noticed the hallway behind the counter. He'd never really paid attention to it before. It was just where employees went. But tonight, he saw something strange. A man in a black vest with no name tag slipped through the door, and it closed behind him with a hiss, like it was sealed. James leaned over. Hey Jen, what's back there? She glanced at the hallway, then shrugged. Storage. Office stuff. Why? No reason, he said quickly, sipping his beer. Just never noticed it before. Jen eyed him. You alright? You look like hell. He gave a half smile. Rough night. Got into a fender bender. Damn. Hope you didn't wreck that old rust bucket. James chuckled. Wreck the hell out of it. He turned away and sat at an empty booth near the hallway, his mind spinning. Storage, but with a sealed door? Keycard access? Something about the way the guy had moved, too sharp, too precise. Like he was guarding something, not fetching kegs. He stayed for another hour, watching the hallway and sipping slowly. Eventually, the man in the vest came back out, carrying what looked like a clipboard and moving briskly toward the exit. James waited a beat, then followed. Outside, the man walked fast, cutting down an alley behind the bar. James slipped after him, keeping a safe distance. When the man stopped to light a cigarette, James ducked behind a dumpster. Too curious. The man muttered aloud. James froze. Then the man turned, facing the alley's dark mouth, his eyes gleaming faintly in the gloom. Next time, bring a better disguise. And just like that, he vanished. No footstep, no door. Just gone. James staggered out of the alley, heart pounding, unsure if he'd just seen some kind of magic trick or a glitch in his brain. Either way, Binary Brews wasn't just serving beer. He needed to get back to Rena. The house was dark when James returned, save for the soft glow of a single lamp in the living room. He stepped inside quietly, locking the door behind him, his thoughts a jumbled storm of adrenaline, confusion, and disbelief. The image of the man disappearing in the alley looped through his mind, paired with the echo of those chilling words. Bring a better disguise. Rena was curled up on the couch beneath a blanket, her ears flicking as he entered. She looked up immediately, eyes wide with worry. You're back, she said, rising slowly. You were gone for hours. I was starting to think. I'm fine, James muttered, stripping off his jacket. Well, not fine, but alive. She crossed the room, her fur brushing softly against the blanket. What did you find? James exhaled and dropped onto the couch. It's true. There's something going on. There's a sealed hallway behind the bar, and guys walking around like damn government agents. One of them disappeared into thin air. Just poof. Gone. Rena sat beside him, close enough he could feel her warmth. They're using cloaking tech. I've seen it before. They wear devices on their belts that project false surroundings or scatter light. It's military grade. James stared at her. You mean like invisibility? She nodded. Sort of. You see what they want you to see. He rubbed his temples. And this is all happening under a bar where I've gotten drunk at least 100 times. Rena gave him a soft look. I told you it's hidden in plain sight. They want people to look the other way. You can't imagine how many people work there and don't even know the truth. He leaned back, wincing from his sore ribs. So how do we expose it? We can't just walk in there. And even if we did, who would believe us? I have something, Rena said quietly. A tracker. He turned to her. A what? When I escaped, I pulled one from another captive's collar. I took it with me, hoping it might be useful later. It's a transmitter and a recorder. I kept it hidden in my fur until I got out. If we can get it to the right hands. James looked skeptical. Like who? The cops? They're probably in on it. Hell, our mayor couldn't spell DNA if you spotted him 2 letters. Rena thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. Not everyone's corrupt. Someone out there has to care. Journalists, whistleblowers, activists. You want to go public, James said slowly. I have no choice. If I don't, they'll find me. And when they do, they'll take my babies. Her hand went to her belly, her voice barely a whisper. James stared at her. He didn't know what kind of future he was tumbling into, but he knew this much. Rena wasn't just another crazy story in a bar. She was real. And she was depending on him. All right, he said at last. We do this smart. You stay here, safe. I'll figure out how to leak this, quietly. We'll burn them down from the inside. Rena smiled, grateful, tired but glowing. And for the first time in a long time, James felt like his life finally meant something. James didn't sleep that night. He sat on the back porch with a blanket around his shoulders, the glow of a cigarette lighting his face in brief flickers. The woods were quiet, peaceful even, but inside his chest was a knot that wouldn't unravel. He stared at the trees where his truck had once crashed through. Somewhere out there, the night had changed everything. He thought about Rena, sleeping inside, curled under a blanket, her tail probably twitching as she dreamed. Pregnant. Hunted. Created. And somehow, trusting him. It didn't make sense. None of it did. But the truth was undeniable now. She wasn't a hallucination. She was a living being. One made in a lab under the very place he'd gone to drink away his life. And now she was here, in his home, depending on him to bring down the nightmare that had created her. He dropped the cigarette and crushed it under his heel. By morning, he was showered, bandaged, and back at his busted laptop. Rena emerged wearing one of his hoodies again, rubbing her eyes and blinking against the sunlight. You didn't sleep, she murmured. Didn't need to, he said, eyes scanning a dozen web pages. I've been digging. Binary Brews doesn't have a real tax ID. The one it does have traces back to a dummy corporation in D.C. And get this, no building permits on file. Nothing about underground construction. Rena stepped closer, tail curling beside her. So it's buried under a shell company. Exactly. And it gets weirder. I found a news forum from 6 years ago. There was a whistleblower who claimed weird tech was being tested in small towns across the Midwest. Project Arctos. He said they were engineering something biologically, but he vanished after posting 3 entries. She nodded slowly. I've heard that name. Arctos. They used it in the facility. It was printed on crates, uniforms, even our collars. James sat back. So it's real. We need proof. Rena reached into the hoodie pocket and pulled out the small black device she'd hidden. It was the size of a matchbox, with a faint red light still blinking on its side. This holds recordings, conversations, locations, dates, everything. James carefully took it from her. If we can extract this, we could leak it. Maybe get someone's attention. But there's a problem, she said, her voice dropping. The device is encrypted. You'll need someone who knows how to crack it. James groaned. That's not exactly a guy you find in the phone book. I know someone, she added, hesitating. There was another who escaped before me. Not like me. Human. He helped us. An ex-tech from the lab. If he's still in town, he might help again. James leaned forward. Where is he? Rena's ears drooped slightly. He lived off the grid, near the old train depot west of town. But he's paranoid. Might not even recognize me anymore. James stood up. Then we pay him a visit. She touched his arm. We? No offense, he said, looking down at her belly, but I don't think you're up for a hike. Rena smiled faintly. Then be careful. If they even suspect what we're doing. James grabbed his coat. They won't. As he left, he didn't look back. But in his mind, he could still see her eyes filled with hope. And that scared him more than anything. The old train depot stood like a skeleton of forgotten progress, tucked behind rusted fences and overgrown weeds. James pulled up to it in a borrowed sedan, his cousin's, which he'd begged to use under the lie of needing to visit a girl. It wasn't a complete lie. The building loomed with shattered windows and sagging beams. Keep out. Sign dangled crooked on the fence. No lights, no movement, just silence and decay. James climbed through a gap in the fence and approached cautiously, Rena's words echoing in his head. He's paranoid. Don't surprise him. He knocked on a door that barely held itself upright. No answer. He tried again. Hey. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need help. Still nothing. James sighed and turned to leave, but then, from behind a stack of old crates, a voice rang out sharp and cold. Step away from the door. Hands where I can see them. James froze. I'm unarmed. I said hands? James raised them slowly. From the shadows emerged a tall, wiry man with a scruffy beard and eyes like cold steel. He wore mismatched clothes, layers upon layers, like he hadn't trusted anything since the 90s. A makeshift rifle was slung across his chest. You from the lab? The man asked, stepping closer. No, James said quickly. Rena sent me. That stopped the man cold. His finger twitched near the trigger. Rena's dead. No, she's not. She's alive. I found her, she found me. She's safe. And she gave me this. James reached slowly into his coat pocket and held out the matchbox-sized recorder. The man's eyes narrowed as he took it, holding it up to the light. Holy hell, he muttered. This is a tracking module. It's got recordings too. Audio. Logs. She said you could crack it. The man stared at James for a long moment. Then he turned and gestured for him to follow. Come on. Inside. But no sudden moves. The depot's interior had been converted into a bizarre bunker. Old monitors flickered with lines of code. Stacks of computers lined the walls, humming low. The smell of solder and dust filled the air. My name's Randall, the man finally said. I worked at the facility. Back before I knew what it really was. Thought we were researching gene therapy. Turns out we were building hybrids. Living tools. James nodded. Rena said you helped her escape. I helped more than one. Randall muttered, plugging the device into a port. They killed the rest. James clenched his jaw. Then help us blow the doors off this place. Randall cracked a grin. You got guts, man. I'll give you that. He tapped a few keys. The screen lit up with garbled text and static. Give me a few hours, he said. I'll get everything out of this thing. But once we do, we won't be able to hide anymore. James met his eyes. We're not hiding. Not anymore. Back at the house, Rena stood in front of the window with the curtain pulled slightly aside. Her ears twitched every few moments, tuned to every creak of wood and whisper of wind outside. The quiet cabin felt smaller than usual, like the walls were leaning inward. She pressed a hand gently to her belly. The pressure beneath her palm was constant now, tight, low, and steady. Not pain, not yet. But the kind of tension that hinted she wouldn't be able to hide here forever. She turned away and moved back to the couch, her tail brushing the floor. The hoodie James had given her no longer hung loose around her frame. Her body was changing, rapidly now. Faster than a normal pregnancy. Faster than what any hybrid should be experiencing. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Please hurry, James." At the train depot, Randall was typing furiously, fingers flying across the keys as James hovered nearby. Lines of alien code scrolled on the screen, strings of time-stamped logs, employee IDs, encrypted notes, and file names that made James's skin crawl. Project Echo Nest. File Extraction Protocol. Specimen 17C, Rena. James read aloud. They were tracking everything she did. Randall nodded, eyes glued to the monitor. They always do. GPS collars, heart rate monitors, reproductive data. These aren't just hybrids. Their own property, according to the files. Like lab equipment. James clenched his fists. She's not equipment. She's a person. Randall didn't argue. They'll come for her. If they think she's still alive, if they find out where you are. She's hidden. I made sure of it. Randall looked at him for a long moment. You care about her. James hesitated. She saved my life. And I've seen who she is, how she thinks, how she talks. She's more human than the people who made her. Randall nodded once. Then you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. He turned the screen toward James. Security footage, he explained. From last week. Look. James leaned in. The video played grainy and flickering, but he could see it, Rena in a glass-walled room, strapped to a gurney. Two men in black stood over her, speaking through masks. One of them injected something into her fore. Her body writhed. Her mouth opened, screaming silently through the speakers. Then, the lights flickered. The men staggered. Rena's restraints snapped loose, not by human hands, but as if by remote command. What the hell? James whispered. She didn't escape alone. Randall said grimly. Someone inside helped her. Another insider. But they haven't come forward. They might still be in the lab. James stared at the screen. If we find them, we could expose the entire operation. Randall said. James nodded slowly. Then let's find them. He took out his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. I need to check on her, he said. Randall looked up. Go. I'll keep digging. As James drove through the winding roads toward home, he couldn't shake the image of Rena screaming in that lab, her body writhing, tortured. And now she was alone in his house. Vulnerable. Pregnant. He pressed the gas harder. Whatever binary bruise was hiding, it was worse than he imagined. And he was done being just another bystander. James burst through the front door, heart pounding. Rena? He scanned the living room. The couch was empty, the blanket tossed aside. A half-empty cup of tea sat cooling on the coffee table. Panic flashed in his chest until he heard soft humming from down the hall. He followed the sound and found her in the bathroom, standing in front of the mirror, her hands resting on her swollen belly. She was brushing her fur, her long tail swaying lazily as she moved. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes tired but serene. James leaned against the doorway, letting out a breath of relief. You scared the hell out of me. Rena turned to him, her ears lifting slightly. I'm sorry. I just needed a moment. Everything's changing so fast. My body. My thoughts. Sometimes it's like I can feel them in there. Not just physically. Emotionally. He walked up behind her and looked at her reflection with her. You look stronger than ever. She smiled faintly. You came back fast. Yeah. Randall's cracking the device. He pulled footage of you. In the lab. They were hurting you. Her eyes darkened. I remember. They're watching everything, James said. But someone helped you escape. It wasn't random. Someone opened the doors from the inside. Rena nodded slowly. There was a man. I never saw his face. But during the blackout, I heard a voice in the speaker say, "Run." Now. That's when the locks disengaged. James leaned against the wall. He might still be inside. If we find him, we can get more evidence. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. How much time do you think we have? He hesitated. Not much. Rena stepped toward him and placed a hand on his chest. Then we need to finish this. Fast. Before they come. He nodded. I'll go back to Randall tonight. We'll prep everything for a leak, video files, voice recordings, documents. It won't stop them completely, but it'll light a fire big enough to draw attention. And me? She asked softly. You stay here, he said firmly. Stay hidden. I'll move supplies to the basement. If anything happens, you hide and don't come out until I say. Rena frowned. I can fight too. James cupped her face gently. I know. But not with them inside you. Her gaze locked with his for a long time. Then she nodded. That night, as James gathered hard drives and documents into a duffel bag, he felt her eyes on him. She watched from the hallway, arms crossed gently over her stomach. James? She said. Yeah? If we make it through this, what happens after? He looked at her for a long time. Then we live. James parked down the block from the train depot again, this time taking a long, cautious route around, watching for tails or dark cars with idle engines. He'd grown more paranoid in the last 24 hours, and not without reason. The kind of people running underground hybrid labs weren't amateurs. If they knew Rena was alive, they'd be watching. Listening. The moon was a faint silver crescent when he finally slipped through the fence and entered the depot's back entrance. Randall was inside, hunched over his monitor, dark circles under his eyes, a half-eaten can of chili beside the keyboard. You weren't followed? Randall asked without looking up. No, James said. I took the long way. Parked 2 blocks out. Randall nodded. Good. Because I cracked it. James froze. The device? Full dump. 30 hours of audio, security cam footage, staff logs, even voice memos from one of the project heads. It's damning. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a flash drive. This is the bullet. James took it reverently, the weight of it sinking into his palm like a stone. This is enough? More than enough, Randall said. Get this to the right hands, and binary bruise burns. James narrowed his eyes. Then what are we waiting for? Randall opened another drawer, this time pulling out a folder of names and contact info. I've been compiling a list of journalists, rogue networks, even some private watchdog agencies. Most won't touch this without proof. Now we have proof. James opened the folder and scanned the names. We start at the top. No, Randall said. We send it to all of them. Simultaneously. They won't be able to bury it if it explodes everywhere at once. James smiled grimly. A shotgun blast. Randall smirked. Exactly. They spent the next 2 hours setting up dummy accounts, encrypting copies of the files, and scheduling autosends through hidden proxies. By the time they were done, the room felt charged with the kind of tension you only felt before a storm. When does it go out? James asked. 6 a.m., Randall said. Give or take a few seconds. James looked at the clock, 3:41 a.m. Then I'm heading home, he said. If this works, they'll come fast. And if they do, you'd better be ready, Randall finished. James turned toward the door, then paused. Thank you? For everything. Randall just waved him off. Don't thank me yet. Wait till the fire starts. The road home felt longer than usual. James kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see black SUVs roaring up behind him. But the night was still. The air held its breath. When he stepped inside his cabin, he found Rena asleep on the couch, curled up beneath the blanket with one hand resting protectively over her belly. The lamp cast a warm glow over her fur. She looked peaceful, and impossibly beautiful. James crouched beside her and gently brushed a strand of fur from her face. She stirred. James! It's done! He whispered. We lit the match. Her eyes blinked open, shining faintly in the lamplight. And now? She asked. He looked toward the window, toward the woods and the distant shadows beyond. Now we wait for the fire. James didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the couch, shotgun resting across his lap, watching the clock tick toward dawn. Rena slept fitfully behind him, her breathing soft but uneven. Every now and then she stirred, mumbling in her sleep, her ears twitching as if even her dreams couldn't block out the tension. At exactly 6:01 a.m., James' phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. He picked it up and unlocked it, expecting silence. Instead, it exploded with notifications. Alert breaking, whistleblower leak, secret genetic program in Midwest town. Underground breeding program alleged beneath local bar. Hybrid experiments? Leaked footage shows unknown life form caged in facility. Audio files reveal human testing and enslavement of bioengineered subjects. James scrolled, wide-eyed, as a flood of news sources and conspiracy blogs pushed out articles and videos. Images of the lab flashed across thumbnails. Blurry, but unmistakable, Rena on a table, her face strained, wires strapped to her limbs. Security guards dragging unconscious hybrids down metal corridors. Scientists with clipboards standing over cages. Rena stirred behind him and sat up, rubbing her eyes. Is that? James turned the screen toward her. She blinked, stunned. It's real, it's out there. He nodded. We did it. But even as she smiled in quiet disbelief, he saw her ears twitch, her body going still. And then, he heard it too. Crunch. Gravel. Another. Boots. Outside. James rose slowly, peeked through the blinds. A black SUV had pulled into the drive. Another idled near the tree line. No plates, he muttered. They came fast. Rena stood, wrapping the blanket around her. Her breath quickened. They tracked it? Maybe, James said. Or maybe they knew the moment we plugged the device in. He crossed the room, flipped open the cabinet near the fireplace, and pulled out a second shotgun. He handed it to her. I'm not letting them take you. She hesitated only a moment before gripping the weapon. Her hands shook, but her eyes didn't. We can't win in a shootout, she said softly. I don't plan to. James moved to the back hallway and grabbed the trapdoor rug, tossing it aside and swinging open the cellar hatch. You go down. Hide behind the heater. Don't move. Don't speak. I'll draw them in, stall for time. Rena looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She threw her arms around him instead, holding him tightly. Come back to me, she whispered. I will, he breathed into her fur. She disappeared into the dark, and he closed the hatch just as the knock came. It wasn't a polite one. More like a command. James stepped into the center of the room, shotgun loaded, jaws set. All right, you bastards, he growled. Let's see how brave you are when the lights are on. The second knock shook the frame. Then the door burst open. The front door crashed inward, the frame splintering off its hinges, and 3 men in black body armor stormed into the room. Their faces were covered in matte visors. No insignias. No names. They moved like a single machine, smooth, controlled, dangerous. James stood his ground in the middle of the living room, shotgun aimed squarely at the lead intruder's chest. The man didn't flinch. Behind him, the others fanned out, scanning corners, eyes trained on every doorway. "Step aside," the lead one said, voice distorted through a voice modulator. James didn't budge. "No." The man tilted his head. "You are harboring classified property. Stand down or be neutralized." "She's not property," James spat. "She's a person. She's pregnant. She's done nothing wrong. Your cooperation is not required. Final warning." James took a single step forward, planting his boots into the hardwood. "Then you'll have to kill me." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. The soldier lifted his weapon, but before he could pull the trigger, the lights flickered violently. The house groaned as if struck by a tremor. Then everything went black. Boom! A sudden pop from the circuit box. All three soldiers froze. James didn't wait. He swung the shotgun to the right, fired at the window. Glass shattered, spraying the room in sharp rain. Before they could recover, he dove behind the couch. Gunfire erupted. Suppressed but sharp, stitching across the room. He crawled low, rolling to the side, and fired another shot toward the hallway. One of the men grunted and went down. The others advanced quickly, training infrared scopes on the heat his body left behind. They were good. But he wasn't trying to win. He was trying to stall. From beneath the floorboards, James knew Rena would be hearing every sound, every thud, every shot, every footstep. He only hoped she stayed down. A second soldier rounded the couch. James fired point-blank, catching him in the chest. The man slammed back into the TV stand and didn't move. Then James turned, gasping, and the third soldier was already there. Crack! The butt of a rifle caught him across the jaw. His vision exploded into stars as he crashed to the ground, blood flooding his mouth. The world spun sideways. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the black boot rising to strike again. And then, nothing. In the cellar, Rena sat crouched behind the furnace, hand clamped over her mouth. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes wide. She could hear the fight above, shots, shouting, breaking glass. Her claws dug into the earth floor, her tail curled tight around her legs. Then came silence. She waited. 10 seconds. 20. A minute. Then the floor above her creaked. She heard boots. Dragging something heavy. And then, the sound of the front door slamming shut. When Rena finally emerged, rifle shaking in her arms, James was gone. Only blood and broken furniture remained. Rena stood in the wreckage of the living room, heart pounding, breath ragged. Her fingers trembled around the shotgun, her claws half extended. Glass crunched beneath her bare feet. The furniture was torn apart. The walls peppered with bullet holes. Blood, James's blood, marked a trail across the floor and out the door. He was gone. "No," she whispered, dropping to her knees beside the blood stain. Her hands moved to the floor like she could will it away, like touching it would reverse time. "No, no, no!" A low growl built in her throat. Her tail whipped behind her, her ears pinned back. Something primal stirred in her chest, a fierce protective instinct, deep and ancient. It wasn't just anger. It was war. She rose slowly, eyes sharp now. Focused. James had protected her, shielded her, believed in her. Now he was somewhere in their hands, bleeding, maybe dying, and every second she wasted here was a second too long. She limped toward the bedroom, clutching her belly. The cramps had started, mild, deep, rhythmic. Not yet labor. But it was coming. Fast. "I don't have time," she hissed under her breath. "Not yet." In the closet, she found the duffel bag James had packed days earlier, just in case. Inside were a few water bottles, some cash, extra shells, and an old flip phone with a prepaid card. She threw it over her shoulder, grabbed the keys to James's cousin's sedan from the hook by the kitchen, and staggered out the back. The sun was rising over the treetops, but the dawn felt cold. She drove fast, windows down, adrenaline rising. Randall's Depot was the only place she could go. If anyone had a lead on where James had been taken, it was him. The tires screeched as she pulled up beside the loading dock and jumped out. Her vision blurred for a second, her balance off, but she pushed through it and pounded on the metal door. No answer. "Randall!" she screamed. She hit it again. The panel slid open, and a rifle barrel poked out. Then a familiar voice. "Rena?" She nearly collapsed in relief. Inside, Randall looked her over with horror. "What happened to you? Where's James?" "They took him," she rasped. 3 men. Black gear. No markings. They stormed the house, beat him unconscious, and dragged him out. I was hiding. Slow down. Randall pulled her in, locked the door, and guided her to a chair. "Are you hurt?" She held her belly. "I don't know. I'm not in labor yet, but I'm close." "Jesus! I need to find him," she said. "You said they had cloaking tech. I need you to track it. You said you could. If you've got anything left in your system that can find those bastards." Randall was already typing. "I might. But if they were running stealth mode, it won't be easy. Still, if they were careless, left a power trace, a signal ping. Then find it," she said through her teeth. Randall glanced at her, surprised at the fire in her voice. "You're not just fighting for him," he said softly. She met his eyes. "I'm fighting for all of us." The depot's computer lab hummed with low static as Randall sifted through layers of encrypted satellite data and localized thermal scans. His fingers moved fast, sweat beading on his forehead as he toggled between interfaces and wiped away firewalls. Rena stood behind him, gripping the back of his chair, her claws leaving faint marks in the worn leather. "I've narrowed the signal," he muttered. 3 pings. All within the last hour. Military-grade transmissions. One of them came from a blind spot 10 miles east, out past the old gravel plant. Rena's ears twitched. "That facility hasn't been active in years. That's why it's perfect," Randall said. "Private land, gated perimeter. Anyone out there has full control. Can you get us in?" Randall frowned. "You're in no condition for." "I'm not asking for permission," Rena growled. Randall paused, then nodded, respecting the weight behind her words. "All right. But if we're doing this, we're doing it smart." He pulled out a case and opened it, revealing a compact headset, a light body camera, and a small handheld scanner. "Take these," he said. "This'll feed me visuals and audio. I'll stay here, monitor everything. Guide you in. I'll patch into their internal grid if I can get a trace on the facility's network once you're inside the outer range." Rena clipped the gear onto herself, tightening the belt around her hips. "If James is there." "He is," Randall said. "There's nowhere else they take him this fast. You're going to have to move carefully, though. There'll be guards. Drones, maybe?" Rena pulled a black hoodie from the rack and slid it over her frame, tucking her tail tightly beneath the fabric. "I've slipped past them before. You weren't carrying 2 extra lives with you last time," he reminded her gently, nodding toward her belly. Her eyes softened briefly. "I know." Randall reached out and put a hand on her shoulder. "Rena, if you don't make it back." "I will," she interrupted. "Don't finish that sentence." A pause. Then he nodded. "Go." The drive to the gravel plant felt longer than it should have. The sun was climbing higher now, casting long shadows through the trees. The once busy industrial road leading to the plant was cracked and faded, lined with rusted-out vehicles and overgrown fences. Rena parked far from the gate and slipped into the woods, moving with surprising grace despite her condition. Her breathing was calm but sharp, measured. Every step, every rustle of leaves underfoot, carried purpose. Randall's voice crackled softly in her earpiece. "I've got your feed. Fence is electrified, low current. There's a weak spot near the west corner. The ground dips beneath it. You'll fit through." She moved fast and low, eyes scanning ahead. The facility was larger than she remembered. 2 warehouse buildings and a concrete bunker in the back, likely the underground entrance. There are guards, Randall warned. 2 at the front gate. 1 patrolling with a drone on the north perimeter. I see them, she whispered. Keep your distance. If they raise an alert, you'll never reach James. Rena nodded to herself. Then, with practiced precision, she slipped under the fence and into enemy territory. And the rescue began. Rena crept through the shadows between shipping containers and rusted metal bins, her heartbeat sinking with every cautious step. Despite the pull in her lower abdomen and the soreness in her hips, she moved like a phantom. Her body, though carrying weight and tension, remembered survival. It remembered escape. Randall's voice stayed low in her ear. You're in. I'm patching into a security feed, old cameras, cheap encryption. You've got 2 sentries on the east loading dock. 1's smoking. You've got a 30-second window between rotations. She crouched behind a crumbled wall, peeking through a crack in the concrete. What about the main structure? The bunker, Randall replied. Concrete core. Reinforced door. I'm seeing activity, heat signatures moving below ground. It's active. If they're holding him, it's down there. Rena's eyes narrowed. Then I'm going down. She bolted across the open yard, staying low, slipping past a stack of decaying pallets. Her fur brushed the dirt as she slid behind a generator box. A drone passed overhead, scanning the ground with a red light. She held her breath. The hum faded. Main door's got a lock keypad, Randall said. I'm working on pulling the code from their access logs. Rena moved to the wall beside the steel door, its surface faded with old warning labels and partially scratched off hazard symbols. She leaned against it, clutching her belly for a moment as another tight cramp rolled through her lower back. Not now, she whispered to her body. I've got the code, Randall said. 1882. Ready? Rena nodded and reached up. Her fingers flew over the keys. The lock clicked. She pulled the door open silently and slipped inside. The interior was worse than she remembered. Fluorescent lights buzzed above flickering monitors and sterile white walls. The air smelled of bleach and old metal. Down a hallway, she heard muffled voices, the sound of boots, a door slamming. She crept down a side passage, pausing as a pair of guards walked past, talking in low tones. You see the leak this morning? One asked. Yeah. Bastards are panicking. HQ wants us to relocate all viable subjects ASAP. They're interrogating the one we pulled from the cabin now. Rena's breath caught. James. She waited until the voices faded, then moved in the opposite direction, following the small map Randall sent to her display. Her fingers tightened around the grip of the stun pistol she'd taken from a security locker near the entrance. She didn't plan on killing anyone, only getting him out alive. Randall's voice buzzed in. There's a cell at the end of Corridor 3B. It's shielded. Camera feeds blocked. I'd bet anything that's where they've got him. Rena whispered back. I'm close. She turned the corner and stopped. 2 more guards stood outside a heavy door, rifles slung across their chests. One leaned back, arms crossed. The other scrolled lazily on a tablet. Rena's pulse quickened. Her grip tightened. James is behind that door. She took a breath. And moved. Rena surged forward like a shadow in motion. The first guard never saw her coming. She slammed the stun pistol into his side, discharging with a crack of electricity. His legs buckled instantly. The second raised his weapon, mouth opening in alarm, but she was already moving. Her shoulder collided with his chest, knocking him back against the wall. Before he could recover, she swept his legs with her tail and fired the stun pistol again into his ribs. Thud. Both men hit the floor in a twitching heap. She didn't wait. Rena grabbed the tablet from the second guard's twitching hand. Randall's voice came through her earpiece again. I just saw that. Remind me never to piss you off. Open the cell, she whispered. Give me a sec, got it. Door unlocking. Click. The door hissed open. Rena pushed inside, and froze. James was slumped in a chair, arms bound behind his back, face bruised and bloodied. A single spotlight cast a harsh beam down on him. One eye was swollen shut, but his chest rose and fell. He was alive. James, she breathed. His head lifted slightly. He blinked through the haze, then smiled weakly. Foxy? She rushed to him, setting the stun pistol down as she pulled a knife from the downed guard's belt. Her fingers shook as she cut the zip ties holding him. You're okay. You're okay. I've got you. He coughed, his voice hoarse. You found me. You thought I wouldn't? She whispered, lowering his arms gently. I should kill them for what they did to you. He winced. I think you already started. She helped him to his feet. His knees buckled, and she caught him, bearing his weight. I've got you. Where are we? Gravel plant? Underground lab. Randall tracked the signal. We've got to move, Randall's guiding us out. The leak worked. You're safe now, but we're not out yet. James looked at her, eyes glassy but focused. You came for me. I'll always come for you, she whispered fiercely, pressing her forehead to his. No matter what. Then a loud buzz echoed through the corridor. Randall's voice flared in her ear. They know. Reinforcements incoming. You've got maybe 3 minutes to get out before they seal the whole floor. Rena looked at the unconscious guards. No time to hide them. Which way? She asked. Left, service stairs. They'll be watching the elevators. She pulled James's arm over her shoulders. Hold on. Always, he muttered. They slipped into a hallway, Rena half carrying, half dragging him toward the service stairwell. Alarm klaxons began to sound above. Red lights flashed along the walls. They were coming. And she was going to fight through every last one of them if she had to. Rena barreled through the corridor, her breath quick and sharp, James leaning heavily against her side. The flashing red lights pulsed like a heartbeat, painting the walls in waves of crimson. Behind them, the klaxons howled, their shrill cries vibrating through the concrete like the screams of the lab's sins come home to roost. 2 flights up, Randall said in her ear. Stairs should take you to the ventilation sublevel. Service door on the far end opens to the perimeter lot. Rena kicked the stairwell door open with a grunt. It slammed against the wall as she hauled James through. He winced with each step, but said nothing, his jaw clenched tight. You okay? She asked, not slowing down. I'll live, he rasped. Pretty sure they knocked out my left tooth and every ounce of dignity I had. Good. You don't need either to survive. They reached the first landing when the door below burst open. Boots thundered on the stairs. Go! Randall shouted. I'm jamming cameras on the upper level. You've got 90 seconds. Rena didn't need encouragement. She pushed onward, dragging James up the final flight. Her legs burned. Her back screamed. Her belly tensed tighter than ever, the pressure now undeniable. But she didn't stop. They crashed through the upper stairwell door and into a narrow maintenance hall lined with exposed pipes and buzzing lights. The air smelled of rust and oil. There, Randall directed. End of the hall. Blue door. I'm disabling the lock now. Behind them, more doors slammed open. Footsteps. Shouting. They're right on us, James muttered. Rena kept her eyes forward. Then they're too late. They reached the blue door just as it clicked open. Sunlight spilled through the narrow gap, early morning, bright and blinding after the artificial hell of the lab. They stumbled into the lot behind the facility. A chain-link fence surrounded it, and beyond it, freedom. Trees. A road. The sky. But a truck roared around the far corner, tires squealing. Another black SUV skidded in from the opposite side. Soldiers piled out, weapons raised. They were surrounded. Rena backed up slowly, pulling James behind the corner of a rusted fuel tank. Her fingers gripped the stun pistol, though she knew it wouldn't be enough. Not against 5 rifles. Randall, she whispered, I need something. Anything. I'm working on it, he said. They're jamming external signals now, shutting me out. Wait, got it? From somewhere behind the fence, a generator exploded. The SUV's lights flickered. Sparks rained down from overhead flood lamps. The soldiers shouted, distracted, their formations breaking. Go! Randall shouted. South fence, weak point in the mesh. Rena didn't wait. She dragged James toward the fence. Bullets bit the dirt behind them, but the enemy was blinded, confused. She reached the weak point, kicked it hard twice, and it bent inward. She pushed James through, then followed. They tumbled into the trees just as backup sirens screamed into the distance. And they ran. Rena and James ran through the forest as gunfire echoed behind them, their feet pounding across roots and mud. James was flagging, stumbling, half-conscious, but Rena's grip on him never wavered. Her body was beyond exhaustion, her belly heavy and cramping, but her will, fueled by fury and love, was stronger than any pain. Branches slapped at them. Birds scattered. The roar of vehicles faded behind as they pressed deeper into the woods. They didn't stop until Rena collapsed beside a fallen log, pulling James down with her. They gasped for breath, the world spinning around them. Are we clear? He wheezed. Rena nodded weakly. For now. James turned to her, eyes finally seeing how much pain she was in. Her hand clutched her side, and her legs shook beneath her. Rena, are you? She gave him a thin, trembling smile. It's starting. His eyes widened. Now? No, she whispered, resting her forehead against his. But not here. We need shelter. Through sheer instinct, they pushed on, deeper into the woods, toward the edge of the county where an old hunting shack stood, long abandoned and overgrown. Randall guided them via a scrambled line, his voice cutting in and out, but the signal held long enough. By the time they reached the shack, the contractions had intensified. James laid her down on an old mattress. He lit the fire. Boiled water. Torn sheets and towels became makeshift supplies. Rena gritted her teeth through the pain. You're staying, right? James knelt beside her, brushing the sweat-soaked fur from her forehead. I'm not going anywhere. Outside, the forest fell silent. And inside the dim, dusty room, as dawn fully broke, the cries of life began. 3 hours later, Randall's voice returned clearly over the radio. You're safe. The leak worked. It's everywhere, news, social, even politicians are weighing in. Binary Brews is shut down. Raided. The program's exposed. You two lit a fire under their asses they'll never put out. James held the newborns, 2 tiny, soft-furred hybrids, against his chest, his arms shaking not from exhaustion but emotion. Rena lay beside him, half asleep, glowing with the strength of a mother who had just survived hell and brought beauty into a broken world. He looked over at her. She opened her eyes and smiled. We did it! We did, James said, tears in his eyes. You're free. They're free. She reached up and took his hand. I'm not going anywhere, he said again. I know, she whispered. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, carrying away the smoke, the blood, the noise of sirens. And somewhere in the distance, the world finally started to change. 3 months later. The world had changed. News of the secret hybrid program had sent shockwaves across the country. Investigations followed, arrests were made. The facility beneath Binary Brews had been sealed and gutted. Whistleblowers stepped forward. Scientists vanished. But for the first time in years, the truth had a voice. Rena's voice. She never showed her face to the media, but her words, through Randall's encrypted channels, reached millions. She spoke of captivity, of forced creation, of stolen motherhood. And she spoke of James. Of how one broken man stood against an empire to protect something he didn't understand, but chose to love anyway. James never sought fame. He didn't care that some people believed the story and others called it a hoax. What mattered to him was right there in the log cabin he now called home. 2 infant hybrids cooing in their blankets, and Rena sitting by the window, humming gently as the fire crackled behind her. He stepped into the room, drying his hands with a towel. "They're asleep." Rena turned, her soft orange fur catching the sunlight. "You have a gift. Just like their mother," he said with a smile. She walked over and wrapped her arms around him, her face resting against his chest. "Sometimes I still wake up and think I'm in a cage again." "You're not," he whispered. "You're home." She looked up at him. "You know what's strange? I was engineered. Created. Grown in a lab. And somehow, none of it matters. Because you were the first choice I ever made." He leaned down and kissed her, slow and soft. "And I'll be your last." They stood like that for a while, no alarms, no running, no blood. Just peace. Eventually, Rena whispered, "They'll grow up in a world that doesn't understand them." James glanced toward the cribs. "Then we'll teach the world. One kind act at a time." "And what about us?" she asked. "You and me?" He smiled, brushing her cheek. "We'll raise them. We'll build a life. And when people come knocking again, we'll remind them that we're not science experiments. We're a family." Outside, the forest stretched quiet and endless. The wind passed through the trees like a lullaby. Somewhere far off, an owl called out, and the cabin settled deeper into the stillness. In a world that had tried to own her, to silence her, to erase her, Rena had found something real. Not freedom. Not revenge. But love. And love, at last, had found her back.